The Judas scenario in disabilities. The Black Messiah movie. I took my son to the police to report an injury inflicted during a day program, a deep bruising to his arm that broke my heart. I went in to make a complaint and let them see for themselves, the police, what a disability boy acts like in my son's case. And James can't speak. James was amusedly running around the police station and settled down to play his music. He ran out the doors into the police back room and I blocked the doorway. "Is everything okay?" asked a policeman. "It's okay, it's just James." "He's not a prisoner," I said, "but he keeps escaping," I said to the policewoman. She smiled. We tried to do the statement on James's injury in the middle of this. My son had received bruises at a day program. A year and a half before this, in a respite house, he'd been hit to the head, and I've been fighting ever since and running a petition on change.org to get something done about cameras being put in all these places. I never thought it would happen in the day program, and yet a year ago I knew that he'd been assaulted by a worker. But I couldn't prove it. So, it seems as though anything goes with a boy who's non-verbal, young or adult, and he's still young in his IQ and not able to speak. James has Fragile X syndrome, which is a neuro disorder, and it's similar to autism. He's cognitively deficient, as they say. They think they can hurt him and get away with it. Yeah, they're right, they can, because James can't speak and he can't say what happens. I won't let this keep happening. I won't keep letting people hurt him. When I told the manager and complained and said, "My son has come home with bruises from your day program," she said, "It's a mystery. We don't know what's happened. The workers didn't see anything." I said, "Well, did the clients do it? The other kids there?" There's only 3 others. "Oh, no, they wouldn't have hurt James." And I think it was just lying, really, what this manager was doing. And she goes, "It's a mystery." She keeps saying that. It was so annoying. It's not a Trixie Belden mystery to be sold or a Secret 7 story. It's not a thriller. But this tension is unbearable. Yet it is rapidly becoming like that, with monsters lurching everywhere when you're trying to look after your special needs child. Lurking everywhere in the shadows of disability care. And I have to be Sherlock Holmes and work it out. Why? Because the managers and disabilities workers lie. They all lie to back up each other's lies, and they don't care like I thought they did, or they portray to me. I guess that's what happens when you have a corporation-type outfit running these things. I have to use a huge magnifying glass to catch those who would hurt or exploit my son. The care workers, so innocent in my presence. Out of sight, they become the Jekyll Hyde character. Beware, I'm going to catch you out. I Spy had nothing on me. I guess we have to get the teddy bear cams or the nanny cams out. Parents get desperate. If you cannot protect your vulnerable child from harm, and the government won't let you put cameras in disabilities or make it mandatory, you are stuck in a place of depression and despair, because that's why mothers are here. They are here to help their children grow and to protect them all their lives. But we are stopped from doing this. We have to watch them getting hurt over and over again when you're least expecting it. Disability workers are often lacking training, and patience too, because it's not their kid. They don't really care, it's a job. "He needs a body cam," I said to the policewoman who took details and photos. "I can't let them hurt him all his life. They're going to kill him. We have had James for 27 years, and he has never had a bruise on him from us. Nothing. He doesn't bruise easily. He was once bitten by a kid at a holiday program, but the workers said, 'Look, another kid did this. Very sorry.' They reported it straight away. That's okay. They're only little 5-year-olds, including James. She reported it to me. I understood. But now, recently, they didn't even do the mandatory reporting they meant to do on both occasions. And he comes home with bruises hidden under his clothes, little marks that we didn't really take notice of the night before, and the next morning, enormous bruises that spread over his whole arm through the coming next days. It was shocking. Coming home, it was similar to coming home with a hit to the head a year and a half ago, with the worker saying she saw nothing. Despicable. She lied, and she said she did see something. Now, in this case, bruises on his arms. This was a day program where I never expected this to happen. Back then, in the respite house, when he was hit to the head, I demanded that the worker go. And they reshuffled, including the manager even reshuffled. And then, over the next year, when I found they were stealing my son's funding, I couldn't believe it. The wolves wait to pounce. They have no conscience, it seems. Back to this story of this particular time, the young policewoman, when I took my son in, said, "I have a camera filming us right now, and I'm wearing a body cam. I want to know if I can put one on James, I said, and a label on his clothes saying I have CCTV surveillance on me. I need to deter workers. I would even put a label on him with no cameras on him if it would stop them. Can you tell me the laws for a body cam, I said, to protect him? She said she would get back to me about it. They should make cameras mandatory in these places, the policewoman said. This NDIS system is broken. She meant the NDIS, but she just said the system is broken. It seems too soon to say the system is broken when it only has just started and came in around 2016. It seems too soon, but it was like it was designed that way. It appears to help our children in some ways, but when it comes to harm and protecting them, it won't, because in the end it's backing up the providers of the care, i.e. the businesses. When I talked to NDIS Quality and Safety Commission on the latest incident that happened to James, she said straight to me, after talking and investigating the day program, there's no witnesses, there's no cameras, we can't do anything. I'd also just been to a doctor a second time and he said these are not hard squeeze bruises, this is a deep trauma to the arm caused by a strong hit or repeated hitting. I told him to write it down. Now the commission girl tells me from the Quality Commission for abuse, tells me no witnesses, no cameras, no one in trouble. The workers should have been the witnesses, but they witnessed something and don't tell on each other. Well, why don't you make them have cameras in the disability places? Oh, it's up to each provider and we can't make them have cameras. Well, you should, I said. We can't do anything, she said. Well, why do you actually exist, I said, to make our lives harder? You never punish the providers. You never suspend them or stop their money, even when our children are hurt. You say we can't have cameras, and yet you say without cameras and witnesses you cannot do anything. So in effect you've made yourself unable to do anything yourself, and neither can we do anything against the providers. The workers never saw anything, she said. They could be lying, I said, or they're not looking. That's failed duty of care, and another client has hurt James, or they saw it and chose to cover up, to protect themselves and keep making money out of my son. The betrayal of these workers and of the corporations reminds me of Judas. Well, Easter is coming. When I was first writing this, he sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. We all know the Easter story, I guess. With Judas, it was all about the money. He pretended to care about what his leader was doing and to care about people, but he was motivated to get his money. There was a lot of discussion on this website when I said people can cry when they're guilty. People said, no, they wouldn't cry if they're guilty. Well, sometimes they do. I have seen plenty of men on TV crying over the missing wife, only to find out later that he had actually killed her. And he's crying at the funeral saying, where's my wife? Oh, my poor wife. Many times in the news. It's awful. The manager had told me in the Pray Day program, the workers were deeply upset and one had cried. I commented that you can cry when you're guilty too. Judas may have cried later. He felt bad after they slaughtered Jesus on the cross for their political reasons, and they did it with the Pharisees handing Jesus over to the Romans. So Judas lied and betrayed Jesus for the money, and Jesus was called the Lamb of God. Judas may have cried or not about it, but he felt remorse and hung himself. He suicided. I think he did feel bad in the end. On the other hand, there was Peter, a disciple of Jesus, who actually did care, but lied when questioned 3 times denying he knew Christ. He did that out of fear for his life, and then wept when the rooster crowed, the cock crowed for the 3rd time. It's the familiar story. But he was forgiven. He didn't do it for the money, the lying. He was protecting himself. It was survival instinct. Yet those in the disabilities, maybe it's survival instinct for them too, because you will be bullied if you speak up. Yet those in disabilities do the job for the money, and they lie for the money, and they don't care about it. Innocent lambs they're meant to be tending to. They easily lie. They may cry when our children get hurt, but this worker only cried when I told them off. It may have also been survival instinct, but they have no shame about letting a disability person or child get harmed, and that is just cruel and wrong. It is also their form of discrimination, the workers. They wouldn't let their own child get hurt, would they? How could the worker who neglected Anne-Marie Smith, who died in Adelaide last year, exactly a year ago on April the 6th, that worker Anne-Marie Smith had cerebral palsy, but the worker let her die with no food or care or moving her at all for a year. She let her sit in that chair for a whole year, that poor woman, who still had a mind that was was of age. She left her there. She left that poor woman to suffer. She got a manslaughter charge, which she's going to be sentenced for, but she's still allowed to babysit her own grandchild and be allowed out of bail. Discrimination in the justice system is still there. It sounds like they felt more sorry for the worker than for the person who died that she neglected. Watching the new movie Judas and the Black Messiah that came out in 2020 about the leader of the Black Panther movement, I know this is just going on another stream, but it's similar to me. Frank Hampton, against discrimination and racism of black people in America. It's a similar thing, the discrimination against them. He had a Judas, a guy that was planted by the FBI into the Black Panther group at Illinois. He was planted there, Bill O'Neill, to know Fred Hampton's movements and report it back to the FBI. He also reported on his compassionate leader so he could get the money. It was for the money that this Bill O'Neill did it. Later, when the house where Hampton was staying was raided at night by the FBI, they killed Hampton using Judas, Bill O'Neill's information. He had also drugged Hampton, his friend, with a sedative to make him sleepy so he would not escape. Yet Fred Hampton was a man of compassion. He was only 21 years old, and even at the age of 10, he'd run free breakfasts for the poor black kids in his area. All he was trying to do was help his people. He was so wise, so young, clever, and strong as a leader, and when he was shot repeatedly by the FBI, murdered really, the FBI were threatened by his power to lead the people and called him the Black Messiah. He was a person who had cared, like Jesus is the Messiah. He was a person who had cared deeply for his people since a child. Even later, he was doing acts of charity and bus pickups, even when he was running his Black Panthers group. For those in his town, helping them in a place where the government did not help anyone, especially if you were black and poor. He died in 1969. Apparently, more than 80 bullets were sprayed throughout the room, injuring many who were sleeping at the house at the time belonging to Hampton's group. Only one shot was fired by the Black Panther members. Another member of the Panthers was killed and others seriously injured. Noted by many scholars who now consider Hampton's death an assassination under FBI's initiative, Stubblefield 2018, Ethics Along the Colour Lines. A civil lawsuit was later filed on behalf of the survivors and relatives of Hampton, and a settlement of $1.85 million, each paid 1/3 to the group of 9 plaintiffs in 1982. Some justice was brought about. Yet I have yet to see this in disabilities justice for those who have died. Justice for Anne-Marie Smith, who died in Adelaide last year in 2020 during the pandemic, left on her own for a year with that worker going in, taking her money possibly. They're still investigating it, and leaving her to die, not feeding her, not caring for her, not washing her. I've yet to see in disabilities strong enough laws to prosecute those who hurt our disability children and even let them die. People can hurt my son and they don't get in trouble. Myrna Aprin, a young girl of 19, was drowned in care at Afford Disabilities, and we have seen no justice done for her, and others we have seen. We need the laws changed. Her mother is still living in deep grief. We need some justice for Myrna. And that was New South Wales, 2019. Years later, Bill O'Neill, who was still living, who betrayed Hampton, has killed himself too, just like Judas. Perhaps he could not stand living with himself or justify helping the death of his friend, Hampton, who was innocent of anything but standing up for his people. I guess the money just wasn't worth the betrayal in the end. Those who play the Judas against our children, from the workers to the CEOs of disability organisations, to continue to get their money and allow the innocent to be harmed and even die in care, should pay a price and be punished for it. No one gets away with anything in this life. Eventually it comes to light what is done in secret, and maybe they have seared consciences and justify their lies or their actions, but we need to catch them. If workers want to lie and cover up and not be witnesses, then we need cameras, CCTV cameras, to be made mandatory and be hard evidence, and we need witnesses to stop those who would harm our vulnerable disability young and adult children. We have no interest they have no interest but to make money out of our children, and they have no hearts when it comes to money. Good ethics are corrupted. We need the CCTV cameras to protect our young now and in their futures. If they can't speak or are non-verbal, then we need them even more. They cannot defend themselves. All the best, Andrea.